The smoke alarm was screaming when I pulled into my parents' driveway at 11 p.m. I'd come to pick up my portfolio, 43 paintings I'd stored in their garage while my studio was being fumigated. My first solo gallery opening was tomorrow. Every piece was already in the catalog. Every piece had been advertised. 3 were already sold to collectors who'd seen previews. I found them in the backyard, standing around the fire pit, wine glasses in hand. My mother was feeding something into the flames, something canvas-shaped, something that looked like. "What are you doing?" My voice came out as a whisper, then a scream. "What are you doing?" Mom turned, her face illuminated by the orange glow, and smiled. Actually smiled. "Oh, Sophia, we're helping you finally grow up." That's when I saw clearly what was burning. My paintings, years of work, thousands of hours, my entire portfolio turning to ash in their decorative fire pit. "Real jobs don't need this garbage," Mom laughed, tossing another small canvas into the flames, my portrait series, the one that had taken 6 months to complete. "We're doing you a favor." Dad lifted his beer in a mock toast. "Time to grow up, failure. You're 28. This starving artist phase was cute at 22. Now it's just embarrassing." I dropped to my knees, reaching toward the fire, trying to save something, anything. The heat drove me back, but not before I saw the remnants of Tempest, the piece that had won the Emerging Artist Award. The one already sold for $12,000. "You burned them?" I said, my voice hollow. "You burned everything." "Not everything," my younger brother Connor said from the shadows, holding up one small painting, a landscape I'd done in high school. "We kept this one to show you had potential once, before you wasted it on this nonsense. The gallery opening is tomorrow. People are coming from New York, from Los Angeles. They're our collectors." "We called and canceled," Mom said brightly. "Told them you'd had a mental breakdown, that you destroyed your own work in a manic episode. They were very understanding." The world tilted. "You, what?" "Dr. Morrison, you remember, our friend from the club. He wrote a letter supporting our story. Said he'd been treating you for bipolar disorder." Dad pulled out his phone, showing me an email. "See? All official. The gallery already responded. They're concerned for your well-being and have canceled the showing." I stared at the formal cancellation from Gallery Montrose sent 2 hours ago. They were deeply concerned about my mental health crisis and wished me a speedy recovery. "You're insane," I whispered. "No, sweetheart," Mom patted my head like I was 5. "According to the paper trail, you are." "Why?" I stood shaking. "Why would you do this?" "Because Harrison Brennan's daughter doesn't work retail while pretending to be an artist," Dad said. "I'm CFO of a Fortune 500 company. Your mother is on 3 charity boards. Connor's at Harvard Law. And you? You're embarrassing us. I'm not working retail. I teach art at the community center to pay rent while I build my career." "Exactly. Teaching finger painting to housewives. Living in that raffle apartment. Driving that ancient Honda." Mom shuddered. "The Weatherby's asked about you at the gala last month. I had to lie and say you were studying abroad." "I didn't ask you to lie." "Your existence is a lie," Connor chimed in, ever the golden child. "You're nearly 30 with nothing to show for it but some paintings no one wants. 3 were already sold." "To whom?" "Other broke artists, friends feeling sorry for you." I pulled out my phone, hands shaking, pulling up the emails. "To the Hartman Collection, to Angela Voss." "To." Dad grabbed my phone, glancing at it, then laughing. "These are the invoices you sent, not confirmation of payment. They probably never intended to pay. Just humoring you." He was wrong. The payments had already been processed. The checks were in my apartment, but they didn't know that. They also didn't know something else. "Where are the other paintings?" I asked, counting the ashes, the remnants. There were 43 pieces. I see maybe 15 here. "Of the big ones wouldn't fit in the pit," Mom said. "We took those to the dump this afternoon. Had to rent a truck. Cost us $80, by the way. You owe us." The dump. She'd taken the centerpiece of my exhibition, a 7 by 10-foot oil painting that had taken a year to complete, to the dump. "Get out," I said quietly. "This is our house." Dad laughed. "You get out and take this garbage artist fantasy with you." I left, drove home in a haze. Called the gallery, but they wouldn't answer. Called the collectors, but they'd already been told about my breakdown. Called my mentor, the established artist who'd gotten me the show, but she was in Paris and it was 5 a.m. there. I sat in my apartment staring at the blank walls where my paintings should have been hanging for the pre-show tour tomorrow. Then I saw the package by my door. From Marcus, my ex-boyfriend who'd moved to Seattle 6 months ago. We'd broken up because my parents had convinced him I'd never amount to anything, that he was wasting his time. But we'd stayed friends. Inside was a hard drive and a note. Thought you might want these for your exhibition catalog. So proud of you. The hard drive contained something I'd forgotten about. Marcus was a photographer. He documented everything. Every painting, every sketch, every work in progress. 3,000 high-resolution images of my art, including detailed shots of all 43 pieces in the Destroy portfolio. But more importantly, there were videos. Him interviewing me about each piece, time-stamped, dated, showing the paintings in various stages of completion over the past 5 years. And at the bottom of the box, a USB with security footage from his old apartment's garage where I'd stored the paintings before moving them to my parents' place. Time-stamped footage showing every painting being moved, intact, just 3 days ago. I called my lawyer. Yes, I had one. Because this wasn't the first time my parents had tried to sabotage me, just the most extreme. They destroyed your work. Patricia's voice was sharp. The pieces that were already sold. Yes. That's destruction of property. Fraud. Defamation with the mental health claims. We can file criminal charges. There's more, I said. They took the biggest pieces to the dump this afternoon. They might still be there. I'll meet you there in an hour. Bring any documentation you have. The dump was closed, but Patricia knew someone. We got in with a security guard and flashlights at 2 a.m. And there, in the section for large items, were my paintings. 28 of them, including Metamorphosis, the 7 by 10 centerpiece. They were damaged, scratched, some torn, but they existed. Why aren't these burned? Patricia asked. The security guard checked the logs. Says here someone called about burning large items this afternoon. We don't allow fires that big. Told them to dump them instead. They tried to burn them all. The dump had saved my career by having fire regulations. We loaded everything into a rented truck. Some pieces were salvageable. Others would need restoration. But they existed. My year-long painting, despite a tear across the bottom corner, was mostly intact. At 6 a.m., I called Gallery Montrose. Told them everything. Sent them the videos from Marcus, the security footage, the photos of my parents by the fire pit that I'd taken without them noticing, the dump receipt with their names on it. The gallery owner, David Montrose, was silent for a long moment. Then, your parents did this? Your own parents? Yes. The opening is in 12 hours. I know. How many pieces can you restore by then? Maybe 10, 15 if I work nonstop. Do it. We'll adjust the exhibition. Call it Phoenix, Art Rising from Destruction. We'll display the damaged pieces alongside Marcus's photographs of the originals. Show the world what you've survived. But the mental health claims. I'll handle that. Dr. Morrison is about to learn what happens when you fabricate medical records. That's a felony, by the way. I spent the next 10 hours in a frenzy. 3 artist friends came to help. We stabilized tears, cleaned smoke damage, mounted what we could. Marcus flew in from Seattle with printed enlargements of his photographs. By 5 p.m. we had something. Not what I'd planned, but something more powerful. The gallery walls showed both versions, the photographs of complete works beside the damaged originals. The burned canvas fragments were displayed in glass cases like archaeological finds. The centerpiece, Metamorphosis, hung with its tear unrepaired, a black scar across the bottom that somehow made it more powerful. The opening was at 7 p.m. At 6:30, my parents arrived. They walked in like they owned the place, Mom in her charity gala dress, Dad in his power suit, Connor trailing behind. We're here to apologize for our daughter's behavior, Mom announced to David Montrose, and to discuss compensating you for any damages her mental episode may have. She stopped, saw the walls, saw the paintings, saw the photographs, saw the centerpiece display, a monitor playing security footage of them throwing my paintings into their truck, labeled The Destruction. 3:47 p.m., November 14th. What is this? Dad's face went white. This is my exhibition, I said, stepping out from behind a display panel. Phoenix, art from ashes, the story of how my own family tried to destroy my career because it didn't fit their image. You can't show this, Mom shrieked. This is defamation. Truth isn't defamation, Patricia said, appearing with 2 police officers. But filing false medical records is a crime, as is destruction of property valued over $50,000. $50,000? Connor scoffed. Her finger paintings aren't worth. David Montrose interrupted. Actually, the 3 pieces that were pre-sold were valued at $35,000 total. The entire collection was insured for $120,000. Would you like to see the paperwork? My parents stood frozen as the officers approached. Harrison and Margaret Brennan, you're under arrest for felony destruction of property, fraud, and conspiracy. This is ridiculous, Dad roared. I'm CFO off. A company that's about to see their executive arrested at an art gallery, David said, already typing on his phone. The art world is small, Mr. Brennan, but our reach is long. By tomorrow, everyone will know what you did. As they were let out in handcuffs, Mom turned to me. You've ruined us. No, I said. You ruined yourselves the moment you lit that match. The opening was a sensation, not just because of the art, but because of the story. Every piece sold. Not for sympathy, but because the story of their destruction and survival had transformed them into something more. The torn metamorphosis sold for $40,000, more than 3 times its original price. The New York Times ran a feature, Phoenix Rising, how one artist turned family betrayal into triumph. The criminal trial was quick. My parents pled guilty to lesser charges to avoid jail time. They got probation, community service, and were ordered to pay restitution, $120,000, the full insured value of the destroyed works. But the real price was higher. Dad was asked to resign as CFO, something about conduct unbecoming. Mom was removed from her charity boards. Connor, the golden child, found his Harvard law reputation tainted by association. Law firms Googled his name and found articles about his parents burning his sister's art. They tried to reconcile once, 6 months later, sent a letter through their lawyer saying they'd been stressed and misunderstood the value of my work. I sent back a photo of my new studio, bought with the money from the Phoenix exhibition. On the wall behind me hung Metamorphosis with its scar still unrepaired, now my signature piece, worth more than their house. I included a note, real jobs don't need paintings, but real artists don't need your approval. Last week, I opened my 5th solo exhibition. The theme was family portraits, abstract pieces inspired by trauma and healing. The centerpiece was a new 7 by 10 painting, a fire pit with canvases burning, but from the ashes, birds rising. Phoenixes. My parents weren't invited, but I heard from Connor that they saw the reviews. The Times called it a searing indictment of parental betrayal that transcends personal pain to become universal. Connor also mentioned they'd had to sell their house. The legal fees, the restitution, the lost income, it all added up. They're living in a 2-bedroom apartment now, the kind they used to mock me for having. They blame you, he said over coffee, one of his rare attempts at contact. They burned my life's work the night before my opening. They were trying to help. They were trying to control. There's a difference. He left, but not before buying one of my pieces, a small painting of a house on fire titled Home. Why this one? I asked as I wrapped it. Because it reminds me that sometimes things need to burn down before you can see what's really there. Maybe Connor learned something after all. My art now hangs in galleries across the country. The story of the Phoenix exhibition follows each piece, how destruction became creation, how betrayal became triumph. Critics say my work has a rawness, an honesty that comes from survival. They're right, every painting carries the smoke of that fire pit. Every canvas remembers the flames. But more than that, they remember the rising. My parents thought they were burning garbage. Instead, they lit a fire that launched my career higher than their approval ever could have. They were right about one thing. Real jobs don't need paintings. But real life? Real life needs art that survives the fire. Art that refuses to stay ash. Art that rises. And I rose.